else? Let me just add something. We doctors who tend to see patients that are in a critical state, we have to measure the ratio of risk and benefit. We have to establish a balance and see what is going to be whether the benefit is going to be greater than the risk. Because at the end of the day, we all will be facing adverse reactions. And as minor as these are, these may be, we as doctors need to calculate and make sure that the ratio, that the benefit is higher than the risk. Right? I just want to make sure that I was able to add my comment. Medicine is not an exact science. We don't take unnecessary risk. We don't go into adventures. The first thing that we actually do is to collect the informed consent to administer any type of treatment. And we as doctors need to find the slightest opportunity of success and take full advantage of it. And we tend to hear that when people do make it, is thanks. If they don't make it, thanks to doctors. If they do make it, thanks to God. Now, we just have to understand that there's always a process for the administration of this drug that starts with an informed consent. Thank you. I think it was a clear answer. Let's make sure that we make it clear that this patient did not pass because of the exposure to the drug. He passed because of the exposure to the different conditions that he was suffering, especially COVID-19 that has an important mortality rate. Well, I have several questions, especially to the Vice Minister. I am surprised that the report does not show the number of people who are isolated at home, the asymptomatics. The asymptomatics also, they were supposed to keep their isolation at home. What is the protocol that they have to observe? What are the norms they have to meet? And now that the massive testing is over, we would like to know whether someone who might think they have coronavirus, can they still have easy access to the test? And I also remember His Excellency, Vice Minister, that there was a significant number of people who had been lost to follow-up, and there was a promise of the government to find them. And I'd like to know, how did we get to such a big increase in number of recovered people? And what is the set of rules that the government intends to implement to continue the good data that you're showing? Besides that, I would like to congratulate you. Thank you so much. Well, Let me try to respond to the question, and I think that I should start by congratulating this journalist because that's exactly what their job is. They have to put us through scrutiny. And if you read the report that we presented, the response is quite clear. We are talking about active cases that would be around 300 cases. This basically means that people who are either isolated or hospitalized, they will be 300 people. There are no other cases, active cases. If we actually break down the hospitalized cases, we'll be talking about 12 cases. This means that the rest of them are asymptomatic. And the isolation protocol is quite clear. If it's at home, the person needs to show that they have the living environment in which they will not become a risk for other people. This is in terms of space. We have a group of people and within our whole response structure, and they are in charge of doing follow-up in the community level. They are part of our primary care level in structure within the NHS, and they're responsible to do home follow-up to all of the positive cases in their district. This is the type of follow-up that we've been doing. We contact them in the morning. We also contact them in the evening. We find out whether there is a change in the way that they're evolving pathologically, their symptoms. If there are no symptoms, there are no changes in their symptoms, most of them will stay home. It looks like 80% are asymptomatic, and those asymptomatic cases tend to show no symptoms and end up recovering. Now, when we talk about that data, we've also mentioned the fact that we are only looking at 300 cases, and we also looked at the number of cases that were not necessarily lost to follow, but they were not in contact to actually be monitored. And that's one of the reasons why we emphasized this pending work to make sure that the data was transmitted to the different commissions and that the data that we were showing, included in our report, was a faithful reflection of what was being done. It was a statistical issue that we were only showing the symptomatic cases, and that was a poor reflection of the asymptomatic cases that were isolated at home. So this is the exercise that has allowed us to tell you precisely that hospitalized cases, active cases, are 12. The rest of them are asymptomatic, and they're distributed in the different health districts that have been established by the technical committee and are also shown on your document. Well, thank you so much, Vice Minister. Let's go on with the next question. Hi. Good evening. I'm Sonia Bolekia. Today we're talking about case management and the incorporation of this drug, and I'd like to know whether you could briefly touch on the protocol, the actual protocol. Well, let me just answer the question quickly. When we're facing any type of a disease, and especially an infectious disease, and especially one that is behaving like a pandemic, like it is the case, the treatment guidelines need to be very well defined, very well organized for you to obtain success. Now, the case management protocol establishes different aspects from the conceiving the protocol and also determining what treatment units will actually be allowed to treat these patients, and then the flow chart and all the different IPC measures that need to be contemplated within these institutions, the preparation for the human resources that will be working within these treatment units. And there is also a high level of potential, a high risk of potential contamination. So that also needs to be kept in mind. And even after the discharge, we still need to understand what level of care these patients will need once they go home. And this was explained by the vice minister. And of course, it is also contemplated all of the different drugs that will be used in the management of these patients. Now, and of course, the treatment of the complications that may appear throughout the disease period. Now, as Dr. Manuel explained, and the rest of the panelists, from the 14th of March, gone over different versions of our case management protocol. From the therapy point of view, we started with the hydroxychloroquine. We also used Calithra, the antiviral. We used the heparin for the most complicated cases, and we kept updating our protocol as new experiences and new clinical trials were being communicated. And of course, as we accumulated experience in the management of these cases. Today, COVID-19 patients that are asymptomatic, obviously depending on the level of their symptoms, right? But if they have no symptoms, the treatment is basically vitamins, antioxidants, etc. But if the patients were to show any type of symptom, then we would run into different treatments. Now, for mild to moderate patients, the therapy guidelines are going to match whatever clinical situation we're facing. But we had also explained that the therapy approach would depend on the physiopathology of that disease. These patients, of course, considering that they have a viral infection, some of them may be facing a situation with pre-existing conditions, and they may have some kind of immunosuppression or a weak immune system. And that's the reason why we started using interferon alpha 2D, because it is it enhances the immune system. And these patients that may be facing a highly inflammatory phase of the disease, which is, that increase in the cytokines, would benefit from interferon. And then we also have the inclusion of another drug to control the cytokine issue. So these patients also face additional infections, and that's why we use the microbiotic drugs, and that depends on the microbiological map of institution, and that's how we show we fight and there's also this other issue. There's also the risk of thrombosis, and that's why we use the heparin, and that was also purchased along with remdesivir with an operation led by the vice president, and all of them were included into the protocol. In the case of remdesivir, it was included as a specific antiviral. But again, this is the resource of work, both directly in front of patients, but also studying and reviewing literature and keeping conversations open with different technical sources and other professionals inside and outside the country. And that has allowed us to review and update our management protocol. So I don't know if the panelists would like to add anything else. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Good afternoon. My name is Martinez Son, and I'm El Correo newspaper. I'd like to ask about the massive testing situation in the continental region, and also If we look at the document for phase 2, it says, the Article 3A, that there will be an availability of random testing, random sampling in the schools. So I'd like to know, to what extent can you still guarantee that that will be common practice in our schools, and whether there is already an established connection with the Ministry of Education to ensure that that will be happening? Well, I'm going to be answering that question, the second part of your question, which concerns the random testing in schools and other educational establishments. This was effectively so part of our decree. And also, the decree said that these tests would start when the schools will be reopened or once the academic year would start. So, strictly speaking, the 1st of September, that's when the start of the academic year would happen effectively. So we needed to be ready to run random tests, and this will require choosing the school, choosing the group of students, etc. It's something that is not going to happen spontaneously. On the other hand, we also know that with the beginning of the academic year, I think that there was a previous journalist who asked this question, we would have to do this through different steps. One of these steps is reflected under Article 12, where it encouraged all departments to create a COVID-19 unit within each of the ministries. Now, based on this, we, the technical committee, have started working with those departments. And very recently, we had a meeting with the Ministry of Education where we focus on those details. Now, we know restart or reopen, we may be facing outbreaks, and we have to be completely ready with the social distancing and disinfection of places and hand washing capacity. But all of this does not depend on the technical committee. It depends on the different departments, just like I said. What was the first part of the question? Massive testing in Malabo. Well, you know that massive testing was scheduled for 3 months. And if we're not at the end of those 3 months, it should happen soon. The testing is still happening with all normality. And we can say that we moved forward quite a lot. We had 9 testing spots that were identified for sampling. But when we programmed those 9 different spots, we did not include the tests that were being performed in the government agencies. So the running tests in government agencies and also massive testing has really helped us to get a clear picture of the pandemic in the province. When it comes to Bata, it's only been about 3 days since the testing started, and we are hoping it will last another 3 months, which is the same length that it had here in the capital. Okay, thank you so much, Vice President of the Technical Committee. I think we have one more question. Okay. A France press agency. I'd like to know. that they were asymptomatic and let you know what was the impact that they had. And whether the virus is behaving seasonally in Equatorial Guinea. We are now going to be finalizing with the questions from the journalists. We're going to allow for the closing of this informative session by the Minister of Health and Social Well-being. His Excellency, you have the floor. Well, before actually offering my closing remarks, I would like to also clarify a couple of things a couple of aspects that I saw were frequent in some of the questions that were coming from the journalists. There is no permanent asymptomatic patients. The virus can only live for a certain amount of time, certain length of time in a patient. Asymptomatics will never be permanently asymptomatics. So we shouldn't think of them as someone who has the capacity to infect other people until December. Now, obviously, this person can infect someone, and that person now infected can infect other people. So other people that were infected by other people may end up infecting people until December, but not the same person. Now, secondly, massive testing has not stopped in Malabo. The clarifying comment made by the Vice President of the Technical Committee is completely truthful. Lately, in Malabo, the 3 functional testing spots were not even receiving a lot of people for to do their tests. And even though these 3 spots were considered hotspots at the beginning, and they were located in neighborhoods that were supposed to benefit the most from this testing capacity, we were able to see that the positivity rate was coming down. But this has also allowed us to develop and extend our lab services with now services in Bata and Mongomo. So we are going to continue with the massive testing. We will also focus on 2 or 3 neighborhoods that hotspots. We were able to track the origin of the original neighborhoods that people were coming from to actually get to the testing spots. So we want to change the location and make sure that we reach any potential areas that might be more that might show more incidents. Now, those are the 2 aspects that I wanted to cover before closing the press conference. I want to congratulate, first of all, the moderator, because it's been a fantastic press conference, both on the side of the and, of course, on the technical level of the answers that were provided. As I was reading my own remarks, those of you who know me probably realized that when I spoke about the health professionals that are working from the first line and that are exposing their own health on a daily basis, and we've lost already 5 of them, I was moved because I understand how brave you have to be to do your job as a health professional. We even have in this room health professionals that became infected, whether they were part of the technical committee or they were working in a hospital. Some of them stayed hospitalized for longer than 1 month, and they're now here. It is the unity, the immunity of SARS-CoV-2 has not been defined yet. We don't know what is the percentage of people that are going to be immune, from 2 to 6%. We have all the reasons, all the valid reasons to still be scared. So I would like to hear a round of applause for all of those people. I would also like another round of applause for the security forces, the enforcement bodies that have also helped and that on a daily basis are trying to control the compliance of the norms, and they expose themselves. And I am familiar with some cases. We've had some security agents that have actually passed just because they were trying to do their job, which is complying with having the population comply with the law. So I'd like another round of applause. Thank you. And I would also like to thank the press. I know that press officials may vary, press heterogeneous, and some journalists are after the truth to share with the population, and some others may just be looking for 1/5 of the truth, but they're still part of the press, and we should encourage the press. We are quite grateful, not only here, but for your regular media attention and the fact that you came to all of the press conferences that we've offered to share the epidemiological data. Of course, there is our national TV channels, and of course, Asonga. I'd like to offer another round of applause for all of them. And another round of applause for everyone who came here and made time to come and listen to us, especially those who believe in us, because if they didn't believe in what we're doing from the government, from the technical committee, they wouldn't come here to listen to the results that have been obtained by all of these actions. So I'd like to offer them also another round of applause. And at the end of the day, I want to thank everyone for making the time to come over. And this will not be the last time that we may call you to come and learn about the evolution of the epidemiological data. Thank you so much.